Hello everybody, welcome to Tpull's Corner. This is Travis, and we are continuing on with the Kaizen Evil decks, where we get slightly less evil each time, and this one's based on your vote, because I did an opinion poll, and the voting came in, and the majority of you chose Heavy Counterspell. So we're doing a Counterspell deck. What is that? Nomad Outpost, okay. We've got potential to play a 2-mana counterspell, so we don't play our tap land. Kind of the opposite of the way I normally play. Normally I'm always putting out the tap land first. Instead, we can get all kinds of different counterspells now. We've got all 4 counterspells we can afford. And we're playing under Streets of New Capenna rules. They've got 3 colors, and we can stop the 3 colors. Let's see, do I save this one? No, I think we just go ahead and say pay 2 more. Zergo goes away. And now I think we can play the tap land. And we still have mana held up for another counterspell as needed. Oh, Dolkovian Pack Beast? No. What is this? Change the Equation is partly what the deck is named after. It's part of why this is good time to be in Counter Magic. Because we've gone to a plane that has multicolors, and that means more and more often there's red or green in the spell. Three, 4, 5. So here I think I'll save Surge Engine because I want to fully utilize more of 3 steps ahead. And my opponent's actually working on, let's see, creatures, whenever you attack, create something? No. So we'll counter that, and we'll draw 2 cards. And I think I'm going to get rid of that. Oh, they're gone. And this is kind of what happens versus counterspells. And that's why it kind of fits in with the Kaizen Evil concept. So we're going to go over the deck tech. I'm going to go over, throughout the video, I'm going to talk about the history of counter magic and the power of blue in the history of the game, stuff like that. This is called the Phantom Equation. It's called the Phantom Equation partly because I've changed the equation. I've been counter testing. I have not lost to a Dragons of Tarkir deck yet, because you counter target spell with mana value 2 or less, or red or green spell with mana value 6 or less. So this is a really clutch card right now, and a good reason to bring back counter spells in case you had an interest in this sort of thing. I tend to like counter spells. I've done heavy counterspell decks before. We had to sort of stop for a while, but let me cover the other part of the name, the Phantom Equation. Phantom Interference. We have 4 copies of the Spree card. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. You want to have this card in your opening hand. It might not work later. But if it doesn't work later, you have the flexibility to just spend 4 mana and get a 2/2 white spirit creature token with flying. However, if I do this right, I could cast this for both later and still have it be very effective. It depends on how well I can do it in combination with the other cards in my hand. But anyway, so that's where the name came from for the deck. Phantom Interference and Change the Equation becomes the Phantom Equation. Let me show you why it hasn't been good for us who like counterspells lately. The set is Lost Caverns of Ixalan. The type of spell is a land, and I'm going to hit craft because I don't even have the land yet. You can see this is a mythic rare land, Cavern of Souls. Everybody and their dog seems to have this. I haven't. I never got it. I probably am going to have to burn some mythic rare wildcards if I do want to get it. But when the land enters, you choose a creature type. Then you can add 1 mana of any color. You spend the mana only to cast a creature spell of the chosen type, and that spell can't be countered. So immediately, people started playing a lot of tribal decks, and or they would play just multiple copies of this card, and if they had different creature types, they'd name different creature types as the different creature types they wanted showed up in their hand. And a lot of what you use counterspells for is to counter your opponent's creatures, and we couldn't do that anymore. So you saw a big dip in heavy counterspell magic. As a matter of fact, there's a deck that's based around Haughty Djinn. I've done one of those before, my own configuration of it. It was very effective, but you have 4 copies of Haughty Djinn in the deck. And aside from that, we didn't really see much else. And I haven't even seen that many Haughty Djinn decks lately either. But Cavern of Souls really put a damper on counterspell magic. And when I first rejoined Magic back in 2020 and found Arena, there was like Yorion decks, control decks were all the rage, especially blue-white control decks. I'm more of a Dimir person myself. I'm black and blue. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. There was heavy counterspells all around. Could be very frustrating sometimes. And maybe it hasn't been that frustrating in the last couple of years because they've kind of moved away, from heavy counterspell decks. And part of that is this Cavern of Souls. Anyway, let me cover the rest of my deck for you. And we'll talk more about why it's okay to have counter magic these days. We have an offer you can't refuse. This is originally from Streets of New Capenna, I believe, was the last time we saw this card. It's now part of the Foundation expansion, so we get it for 5 years, at least. You counter target non-creature spell, although its controller does get to have 2 creature tokens in return for this being such an effective spell and being so cheap. My 1 Ether Spark card, Bounce Off, because I like a bounce spell, but I didn't like the cards where it's only good on your opponent's creatures. I needed something that could work on my creatures as well. And since they're 1 copy of Minor Misstep, counter target spell with mana value 1 or less. You'd love to make good on that on your opening hand. Interference we covered. 2 copies of Spell Pierce, counter to non-target creature or non-creature spell unless the controller pays 2 mana. Then 3 steps ahead. This is the staple counter magic card that has been in almost all blue decks. So if anybody wants to have a counter spell, this is probably the first one they choose. I don't have 4 copies yet. I only have 3 copies. I use 3 copies. But you need 2 blue and 1 colorless to do counter target spell. And this is kind of the big difference between Magic when we started. Counterspell was 2 blue, and you could counter target spell. And they decided that was too powerful, and so they added on the 1 colorless. I forget how long it took them to do it. But ever since then, the counter target spell has cost you 2 blue and 1 colorless. It's been a 3-coster. And it's kind of interesting after 30 years to see the power creep in the game. They have not changed that after all this time. They still consider 2 blue to be too powerful to counter a target spell. They'll do other stuff where it's usually 1 and a blue, and I have some of those, to counter some kind of spell, but not every spell. So, but this is kind of a utility card. We're usually hoarding this as much as we can to counter target spells, but if we get chances to spend more later, we can create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature we control, or we can draw 2 cards and discard a card. We've got some cost reduction so that we can make these free cards. We can cast them for really cheap later, not their full cost. And let me cover that cost real quick. You notice average converted mana value, or converted cost, is 2.1 on average. Only have 9 creatures. But because we have things like creating tokens here, we can create some white spirit creature tokens here. We're closer to 18 if the game goes on for a while. Here's a creature, Surge Engine. It starts off as a colorless artifact creature, 3/2 with Defender, so it can't attack. But anytime you want, even on your opponent's turn, you can spend 1 blue mana and lose the Defender and make sure that when it attacks, it can't be blocked instead. For 3 mana, the creature becomes blue. It has base power and toughness 5/4, so you turn it from a 3/2 to a 5/4, and it can attack, right? And it can't be blocked. Now, the reason that they said the creature becomes blue is because it started off colorless. They don't want you to skip from the first ability to the last. They don't want you to pay 1 mana 1 turn and then pay 6 and skip the 3, right? For 6, you notice draw 3 cards, activate only if this creature is blue and only once. So they don't want the ability to become too busted, so you can only draw 3 cards once. You can only do it if Surge Engine is blue. The only way to get it blue, apparently, is to pay the 3 ahead of time. So you'd have to pay 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in order to get the full value out of this card. But they don't want you to skip from 1 to 6, so they make sure that you have to make it blue first with the 3 cost in the middle, and then you can qualify to pay for the 6 later. Change the equation we've gone over. This is one of the reasons why it's a good idea to play Counter Magic now. Dragons of Tarkir looks awesome. I want to play those cards. I skipped most of Ether Spark. I don't even know what some of the Ether Spark cards are still. It's just not to my liking. So you can play on Arena and sort of ignore an entire expansion if you want to, which is good news for what's coming up this year. But if you want to have a chance against Dragon decks, if you do have blue in your deck, consider this card might be more valuable to you than 3 Steps Ahead, which is heresy. But you know, they've done this before where they've introduced a new environment, and cards that were considered less suddenly become more valuable. It's part of the variation of the game that keeps us on our toes, the changing meta. Defabricate, love this card. Brothers War card, target, counter target artifact or enchantment spell. You notice it's a counter spell for only 2 mana, but they could put enchantments down, they can do sorceries, instants, they can do creatures. This is good against artifacts or enchantments only. So only 2 mana, much reduced in scope. However, if the spell's countered, it's exiled instead of going into the graveyard, which can be handy. Or you can counter target activated or triggered ability, which I've done against white life gain decks, and it's made a difference for me in combat sometimes. So I'm learning more and more to not automatically allow our opponents to activate or trigger their abilities if I have this card. Sometimes it's useful just on 1 turn alone to counter it. In the old days, you heard people say, don't mainboard this card, it's a terrible card. Disdainful Stroke. I've been having good luck with it. Counter target spell with mana value 4 or greater. 4 copies in my main board, no sideboard, because I'm not playing best of 3, we're just playing best of 1 here. It's worked out. Next is Malkator's Watcher, 4 copies of it. Flying with Vigilance, 1/1. When it dies, you draw a card. So I have 4 ways to draw a card here. I also have 4 of the Surgical Bay to draw a card later. So that's most of my card draw. We'll get to the one final card later. Cryptic Coat, when it enters, cloak the top card of your library, so you get a 2/2 creature with Ward 2. The equipped creature, it is automatically equipped to your little creature. Gets +1 and can't be blocked. So you've got a 3/2 attacker, just like the Surge Engine, that can't be blocked. If you do, you can spend 2 mana, return the equipment to the owner's hand, that's you, and then you still have that 2/2 creature with Ward 2, but it could be blocked now. Too bad you can't equip this on another creature. No. This card also enables me to create additional tokens. I'm usually hoping desperately. Urtai's Scorn. When I made my Haughty Djinn deck, Urtai's Scorn was really clutch. Costs 1 less to cast if an opponent casts 2 or more spells this turn. When you come up against the mono red decks, which I don't usually anymore, or like the fast white creature decks, which is tons of white creatures. This card comes in handy quite often, just because your opponent often likes to and is able to cast 2 spells in a turn, even early on too. Just because Magic has made so many cards it's so cheap, and made them synergize so well with each other, it's nearly irresistible to make much cheaper decks these days. Haughty Djinn, of course, instant and sorcery spells cost 1 less to cast. The more instant and sorcery cards we get in our graveyard, the higher the power climbs. My 1 copy of Ether Eyes, which may be my favorite card from Foundations because I keep putting it in every blue deck I have. I have 1 copy. We're using 1 copy. If we get overwhelmed by creatures, we'll just throw everything up into the hand. It's good against the mobilize mechanic in Dragons of Tarkir. It's good against other tokens. It's good against creatures that have counters on them. It's good against a lot of stuff. 1 copy of Mind Splice Apparatus. This is a lovely card to operate with the Spree cards, which I think I'm going to have an all Spree Mind Splice Apparatus deck coming at you soon. Whenever I can get to it. And I do have to apologize because we went on an impromptu 3-day vacation, so I didn't put out something Monday. I just got this video coming out this week. But every turn you get an oil counter at the beginning of your upkeep, and then instant and sorcery spells corresponding cost 1 less to cast for each oil counter that it has. So all of these instants in sorcery, all these counterspells are going to become cheaper if I get that out. Here's my other draw card advantage. Flow of Knowledge. Draw a card for each island you control, then discard 2 cards. That's an awesome card. And Archmage of Runes. A giant wizard, 3/6. Instant and sorceries cast 1 less cost. Let's try this again. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Say that 3 times fast. And whenever I cast an instant or sorcery spell, I draw a card. So good odds that I can make my land drops when he's out. And also good odds that when I cast a counterspell, that I just get another one right away. And finally, my fun card, Temporal Anchor. I see this card used. I've used it in a couple of decks. But it's a legendary artifact, costs 6 total. Whenever you choose to put 1 or more cards on the bottom of your library while scrying, you exile that many cards from the bottom of your library. So basically, everybody knows how to scry, right? You look at the cards, you don't want them, you put them on the bottom of your library. Instead, they get exiled underneath the Temporal Anchor, and you can play those cards, any card that's exiled with Temporal Anchor. If you've got enough mana to cast them, you could cast them all. You could still only play 1 land. So you do have to use judgment with this, because normally you don't want to put your counterspells under this. But if you're expecting your opponent to play like a removal card during your turn, you might still get away with it. But normally you're drawing your counterspells and you're scrying everything else to the bottom so that you can just use this for playing your lands whenever you need to. Maybe you empty land from your hand instead is more advantageous, and you keep the land, just extra land off to the side under Temporal Anchor. You can put your flash cards under here. You can put your creature cards under here. So just most of your stuff you can put under here. And so you're basically drawing potentially 3 cards a turn instead of 1. What else do we have? We have 1 Demolition Field, take out their specialty lands, and we have 1 Pit of Offerings, so we exile up to 3 target cards from their graveyard. That's my 1 graveyard hate. So this Kaizen Evil series that we're doing, we're making decks that are 1% less evil each time. We went from land destruction to discard to mill to counterspell, and they're all kind of thematically in keeping with what happens, right? With land destruction, you're destroying your opponent's lands so they can't afford to cast their spells. They can't play with their spells. With discard, you're yanking that stuff right out of their hand. And with mill, you're taking cards away from their library. So you add counterspell into that. Counterspell just prevents their spell from going off. All of those 4 types of things. Let's do Phantom Interference. That's worth it, so they don't get a look at our hand. And everything we have is counterspell, so we're completely reactionary against them. But all 4 of those types of cards counter non-target spell. They don't have the 2 extras, so we're not going to give them draw card advantage, even at the cost of life. And they are not used to this, but they're kind of liking it. I'm going to play the untap land opposite of what I usually do, because I want options here. A Blight Priest. This is going to be countered by Urtai Scorn. They are just spamming nice now. And they never stopped. We will pass here. So were they generally saying nice, or are they just being extra snarky because they hate heavy counterspell? I guess we'll mute them. And maybe that's all they're doing now is spamming nice and they stop playing the game. I don't know. But yeah, so Counterspell fits in very squarely with land destruction, discard, and mill as far as the degenerate strategies that you can use in Magic the Gathering. When very early days, people started making full Counterspell decks. Blue was very powerful in the early days. You've got all those cards that are specifically blue that are in the power of 9, so disproportionate presence of blue spells in the power of 9 that are so powerful. They spent a lot of time. Ooh, we're going to keep this, so counter target spell with mana value 2 or less. This is only costing 2. They might still have another removal. We're running out of ammo here. And it seems like they have something else they can do. Look at that. All those cheap spells. They got us. A 1/1 flyer's not much, but it's what I got. They matched me with the 1/1. A Blight Priest I can't stop, so we're going to try and draw a card here. And this is kind of what Arena's been doing to me, actually, is they've been pitting me against really, really cheap creature decks this whole time. When they decide that I should no longer win, it's 1, 2, and 3 mana spells constantly. And my opponent's actually outdrawing me on land. Let's go ahead and block there. They didn't like that card. Actually, I won't trigger that this turn. Let's just pass the turn. I want to be able to cast both of these. Conceivably, they could cast a 2 mana spell and then a 4 mana spell. They're content to just save up. Now I do it at the end of their turn. That's a good card. Fountain Bell Port. Alright, you know, you can change that. You can have that one. You're searching for land? They didn't put any land there, right? They just used it for card draw. That's fine. Mind Splice Apparatus comes out. And everything's getting a little bit cheaper. I need a creature before I can create a token, though. Hey, look, there's a creature. Let's try this. They've got something they can do. I don't know what it is. Bitter Triumph. No. Can you still do something else? Have you been hoarding removal spells? Excuse me. You notice that although traditionally, stereotypically, if you're a heavy blues counterspell deck, blue takes a really long time to think about things, but instead, it's them. They're the ones thinking about things. We're going to counter that spell. And we're going to take the bait here. Do they have a trick? They do. They have the trick. So they get to keep their creature. And all we did was get a land. Ooh, that's kind of nice. Ah, cheap removal. I had the wrong type of counterspell. Nothing to do to stop that. What has been my land draw with this? This does not necessarily help me that much. We just ran out of gas. We have something. Okay, they've had a lot of different type of interaction and counterspells, or removal rather. I absolutely need to block. They get rid of a flyer? I don't know why they would do that. And again, I have no choice here, so if they have a counter, if they have combat trick, I'm still out of the running. They just had another one. Again, only 2 mana, really cheap stuff. And so this entire game, I've been waiting to use Disdainful Stroke, and Arena put me up against somebody that has none of it. So thank you, Arena. And this is why they say Disdainful Stroke is a bad card, but it's been helping me destroy all the Dragon decks for the last couple days. Yeah, typically these days, blue is not quite as powerful as it used to be. They've tried to take care to balance the colors a little bit better. I think blue still has one of the biggest potentials once they get going to do bigger stuff. And part of that's just their card draw advantage that they have built in. But they've been changing white and red over the last few years due to the need to keep up in Commander to sort of chip away at that and allowing extra draw capabilities in red and white. So the gap has been narrowing. And so Disdainful Strokes might be useless here. This is actually the first time I've gone up against a mono red. And this is the problem with blue, right? If traditionally, if you're doing a heavy counterspell and your opponent goes first, good odds they're going to win. That's just the way it goes. Exactly what they need to counter my magic. I can't really do anything against them yet. We can do a counterspell if they want to try and modify something. But the problem is they both have prowess, so even if I counter it... oh, actually I can just counter that one, can't I? That's a creature spell, so that can get countered. For instance, and sorceries, though, even if I counter those, they could still pump things up. So opponent not missing a land drop yet. I feel like I have to put out something. Not missing a land drop, still beating me on land. I might not even draw my next land. We can afford all of that. Double strike to the mouse. And Magic Arena made sure to put these two spells, 2 copies of the most worthless card, against mono red aggro. They shouldn't swing in with the Swiss Sphere. I'm going to kill that. I'm not sure why they would bother to do that. Unless they just don't care anymore. Okay, I am keeping match on the land. Play that for a chump blocker. Although they can give it double strike and trample, so this 1/1 is just not enough at this stage. Not enough mana to do a Phantom Interference. We can counter this. But 2 worthless cards, so I don't see a way out of this. We block there, we block there. I don't know why they're attacking with that stuff. That seems to be a mistake, but they're so far ahead. They're still ahead of us on land. Ugh. When it dies, it deals damage. So we went second. We went second. Opponent did not miss a land drop. Arena made sure that we went second against mono red aggro. And had 2 completely worthless cards in our hand the entire time. Thank you, Arena. Whenever the team of spies at Wizards are through handing me my head on a platter, we'll go back to the normal variation that Arena does. Maybe we'll come up against a good dragon deck again. Remember, they're supposed to make sure that I have just a 50% win-loss ratio. So, at some point, I am going to get to go first again someday. And someday, I won't be facing decks that are only full of 1, 2, and 3 mana cost. I can do this. I can do this. Nope, I still put down the untapped land. Normally I'm putting down the tap land as soon as I can. Counterspell decks change the equation. Again, Streets of New Capenna rules, they're playing 3 colors. We just spell pierce that. They get all 3 colors that they need. Let's go ahead and put down the tap land finally. Opponent does not miss a land drop. They try again. We counter it again. Same spell. Do we play this now? 2. Yeah, I can't afford anything else really, so let's just make sure they don't have a way to bring those pesky enchantments back. We still have minor... Although we are kind of running out. Seriously? I can't stop that, can I? This is only 2. They can pay it. So they get it. Come on. They choose Mardu. So they could get a red goblin creature token. And instead, they're doing extra triggerings of things. Alright, let's do you. And now we have to worry about haste. Opponent still... Okay, but they bit off more than they could chew. We can counterspell that. This is the dragons. We're doing good against the dragons. Okay, so now... Flow of knowledge. Draw 4. And we'll discard a couple. Attack for our 1 point of damage. They have a big opening here. And they get something. That's first strike too, isn't it? Well... I think we try Cryptic Coat. This limits us a little bit. If they have cheap costs and they can pay for 2 spells, we're in trouble. There's changed the equation. That would actually been a good spell for me to get. But I already have 1 copy of that, so we can actually cast both of these. And we're just going to let that through. They don't have another creature out yet. So it looks like that's all they can do against us. And we can beat them if it's 4 damage to 2. And we have a good stockpile of tools here. So we've finally reached the point where I feel good. Partly because I can counter this one now. That saves us from sacrificing a creature. And we don't start the clock on their little start your engines thing. We'll take this damage. And do they try anything else? They do not. Okay. Good enough. Now we just keep our mana dry. Again, we're worried about 2 spells. They have 4 cards now. Let's do... Let's see, is that 8? I can do this. Bam, bam, bam. Pay for all of it. We'll target the Malkator's Watcher. That was a haste creature. Let's get rid of these 2. Hello? 1. Oh, just discard a card. Never mind. We will get rid of... Oh! I was just going to get rid of the island. Sorry, it took me so long to click there, opponent. We get a card! Brazen Collector. Alright. Yeah, you counter too many spells. It can be frustrating. We've gone through entire years of expansions where Counterspell Magic was really good, really effective. we sort of came out into this phase, I think mostly with the Lost of Caverns land, the Cavernous Souls, that really got rid of some of that fear of counterspell magic. I don't come across it that often myself. Again, doing the opposite of normal, we're playing our tap land last. We can, let's see, Dragon Sniper, Vigilance, Reach, and Death Touch. No. Minor Misstep is good, because this looks like to be a very cheap deck, so we should make good with this card. Circuitous Route. We will use Disdainful Stroke on that. We do not need them to do any ramping. Now we got a nice variety of almost anything they could do, we can stop. One mana spell? One mana spell, come on. You know you want to. We're not giving you nothing. Someday I will draw a creature. Within the next 18 cards, I should draw a creature. Look at that. They still matching me land for land. Okay, we're ready for an artifact or an enchantment. You know what? We're going to let him do that one, because I'm running out of ammo. Okay, we'll wait on that one. Artifact or enchantment? No, that's a big creature. We use the last regular counterspell. Let's pass here. I want to be able to flash in Mind Splice Apparatus if they don't cast anything that we can counterspell. Enchantment! Get rid of you. And it's exiled. And they've had enough. They're going to get more ammo. And am I ever going to get more land? 6 lands to 4. Seven lands to 4. That's green. We'll stop it. Look at that. We finally got something. Let's pass. Counter that. Now they can afford a ton of stuff. They just need a good spell. And although we're the blue player, they're the ones thinking, woo! Look at that Titania's Command. They had exactly the right mana that they needed to empty their hand and go get exactly what they wanted. And that was some good spells. Okay, so I can do this. Anything except Aetherize. Surge Engine. Not the best. Okay with blocking that one. And now we can finally strike back. 9 lands to 5. This is not usually how you want your counterspell games to go. But we do have a chance. Phantom interference. I was supposed to attack with the Watcher there. Not too big a deal. That's a lot of turns and we are still alive. But why is everything freezing now? We've been doing so good. We'll have to make this the final match. I've got hot food waiting for dinner soon. Okay, we will stop forgetting to attack with our Vigilance. And now we got a blocker against all of their little stuff. Land. Perfect. And now they're on a clock. And we can stop a big thing. We can't stop that. They could start trying to bum rush us if they have enough creatures, I suppose. Excellent. They're waiting for a landfall creature. And they're just flooding out, which is impressive considering all the ramp that they had. All the ramp and they're still managing to flood out. And this is kind of why you need to have something in your deck to deal with flyers. Look at that! Something to do with flyers. No. It feels bad to spend 3 to get rid of a single mana spell. Yeah, I started laughing there. I guess I had to admit that I did like that. Yeah, they have Vigilance, Reach, and Death Touch. Finally, the one card they need to stop the bleeding. And it's definitely worth it for me to spend 3 mana to stop their 1 mana card. I don't know how many of these they had. I think we stopped one earlier, right? Yeah. So even, I mean, maybe they had 4 copies in their deck. So they did have something with Reach. But what were the odds that they were going to get through it? We did manage to get them through almost half of their deck. And so we did get through that. That's a good example of a card that's it's got mostly cheap stuff. But it had some big cards too, and so our Disdainful Stroke came in handy. I'm glad we went up against a Dragon deck, because those have been... The longer that I play this this particular deck, the fewer and farther between the Dragon decks are. But there are so many people playing with Dragonstorm right now that they just... Eventually they have to give me a Dragon deck. I'm telling you, the reason this deck is named the Phantom Equation is because of Change the Equation. I think this is going to be a really sparkling card that you should definitely consider any time that you're making a blue deck for the immediate duration of the future, considering how popular and how banger of a deck the Dragon deck is, or the Dragon expansion is. Temple of Anchor, I wish we could have gotten more examples of that. Archmage of Runes, again, really great in combination with a lot of these other things. So I think it's just a case of, if I had more time, I would actually continue this and play more matches for you, just to show you the ins and outs of Counterspell decks. just because I'm not seeing a lot of Counterspell out there on YouTube, and I'm not encountering it myself in the environment, but it is something you need to know how to fight against. There are a lot of things that you do opposite of what you normally do for the regular conduct of your Magic battles. So if you want, here's another slightly less evil deck that you can take out for a spin. Let me know if you do. Let me know how it handles for you. And if you're newer to the game and have any questions about how the timing of a particular spell, or if anything still seems confusing, go ahead and put a comment down there and let me know. In the meantime, just do what you always do, like and subscribe, and have a good one.